that led me to doing more and more on the coaching and the leadership development front. And so I find that those two areas where we can develop our people to make them the best they can be, and then give them the rewards and the recognition that they deserve and have earned, we can do amazing things.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nuske here. It's wonderful to be with you. I hope you are doing well no matter where you are in this big, wide, wonderful world of ours. Now, also thank you so very much for supporting the show. It is making a great deal of difference, knowing that we are making a difference. Now, on today's show, we're with the wonderful Ed Crowe. How are you, Ed?
Hey, I'm great, Rick. How are you?
Fantastically. Well, we were just talking momentarily about Ed's book, Strategic HR, Driving Bottom Line Results Through Your People. And we're going to be talking a lot about the HR function. Oftentimes, business owners, those who work with HR professionals, see it as an obligation, nothing more than a regulatory requirement, Ed. But before we jump into your views on that, I always love to learn a little bit more about my guests. So would you mind sharing a little bit about your lifestyle and the things you love to do when you're not at work?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If there is such a thing.
Oh my gosh, yeah, there has to be. I mean, I'm a true Gen Xer. I love to work, but I also love to play. And so I do love to get out and golf. I'm not very good, but I love to play. And obviously, you know, when pre-pandemic,
Yes.
Loved to travel. My wife and I have kind of a hit list, and we try to take something off of that hit list every couple of years or whatever. I've got 3 beautiful daughters. A couple are already grown and out of the house. One is still here. And yeah, just kind of enjoying life and this idea of being an entrepreneur. And the bug bit me, and so here I am.
Thank you so very much, Ed. I wonder, how was it that you, I guess, stuck your toe into the HR waters? How did this all come about for you?
Well, I had spent my early career with UPS and had pretty much done everything there. I mean, I worked the docks when I was in college, and I drove and had a couple of operational rotations, and then got pulled into HR and just fell in love with that as a profession. And while UPS was a great run, I just was not pulled to being a kind of corporate America kind of situation. And so decided that I wanted to try out consulting. So I joined a consulting firm for a brief period of time, loved it, and said, this is what I want to do. I can help lots of people this way. And so it's been 20 years now that I actually went out on my own and have been working with some great clients, over 250 organizations in the last 20 years. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. You talked about something critical there, is about helping as many people as you can. Now, I guess this is very much a mind shift move for those who see it as nothing more than like a legal requirement. What are some of the things that you've, I guess, encountered in your experiences? Because I'd love to unwrap those and see how you can change your mindset towards HR.
Yeah. I look back to the early days of when I started my practice, and it was a lot about compliance, writing job descriptions and policies and procedures and that kind of stuff.
Put you to sleep.
And what I found is, number one, it was not a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I didn't get a lot of joy out of doing those things. But more importantly, they weren't truly impacting my clients. It was like, oh, we would check the box. We did those things. And so I really said to myself, well, what about HR is it that can have an impact for the people in the company, but also for the company? And so I started to move more towards how we pay our people and incent them. How do we tie the reward system that we're offering back to the driving results for the company, so that when the company does well, the people do well?
Mm-hmm.
How do we get them all on that same, same path, right?
Yep.
And then that led me to doing more and more on the coaching and the leadership development front. And so I find that those two areas where we can develop our people to make them the best they can be, and then give them the rewards and the recognition that they deserve and have earned, we can do amazing things. And so, I was just on the phone with a CEO prior to hopping on here with you.
Mm-hmm.
And his biggest concern he kept coming back to is leadership development. Ed, our HR function, they get all the little stuff. I need leadership development. I want my people to be truly empowered and really have an impact in my company.
Yeah, I wonder, is this something to do with the early stages of the relationship with an organisation about, I guess, proper selection? Would that come into this?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm a big believer in culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so regardless of what your organization culture is, and I will say this, you have one, whether you know it or not. I actually had a business owner one time tell me, I don't really have a culture around here. I said, yeah, you just don't know what it is. We'll talk about that another time, right? But I look and say, okay, what is our culture and what is it that we want it to be? Because every hire that comes in changes that culture a little bit. And the smaller your work group, the bigger impact that hire will have.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about a work group of 20 and you hire in a VP of whatever, and that's a bad fit, wow, is that going to have ramifications? You might be able to get away with a bad culture fit in an organization of 800 where there's 500 people working in a warehouse and you hire in a bad warehouse person, you might be able to cover that up. But if you can't, and that culture cancer starts to spread, now you've got problems. So it absolutely, to your point, starts at how we recruit, how we advertise for our positions, and then how do we vet folks out to come in, and then how do we bring them on board once we do make the decision.
I just had a thought come to mind, Ed. Can you teach an old dog new tricks? If you've got a long-term employee, excuse me, who's been there a couple of decades and you're now asking him to change direction with you within the organisation, is that possible, do you think?
Based on the individual.
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to ultimatums, right? So right. I don't look at someone and say, oh, you're over 50, forget it. You're put you out to pasture.
Yeah.
No, I think it comes back to that person's drive. And do they want to keep up with the times? I mean, you probably know folks as well that they could be in their 70s or 80s and they're always looking for a new challenge and something new. And then you find someone in their 20s who just wants their bologna and cheese sandwich every day. And so, I think it has a lot more to do with our outlook on work and life than it has anything to do with our age or tenure with a company.
With relation to incentivizing change, I guess, would you think that providing external paid training for higher learning is important as an incentive tool?
Yeah, we saw here in the States, we saw a big push for that amongst corporate America 20 or so years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where we're seeing it change now is maybe it doesn't have to be a degree, right? You don't have to necessarily go take a college or university class, but what are you doing to better yourself? I've come to believe that personal development has to be just that, it has to be personal. So we can't expect our employer to do everything for us on the front of developing ourselves. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to look for the weaknesses in our armor. Where are the things that we need to grow and go after those? Maybe it's something like reading a great book on leadership or listening to a podcast or a YouTube video, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be big change where we're committing months of our lives, right? It could be 5-10 minutes a day. And that's how I approach my personal development. Is I try to spend a little bit of time every day, whether it's a podcast or read a chapter in a book, just something little to expand my mind a little bit.
Thank you very much for sharing these insights, Ed. They are wonderful. I know that for myself is that I respond well when I feel valued. If somebody says thank you for something, could it be that simple to incentivize people to, I guess, do more, give more inside an organization?
It absolutely is, Rick. That old saying, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah,
it's true.
It's true. Imagine that.
There's a great book out there. I believe the author's name is Jack Mitchell. And he wrote a book called Hug Your People. And this man runs a series or a chain of high-end clothing stores up through New York and into Connecticut here in the States. And he wrote this book about how he likes to take care of his people. And to your point, it's the little things. If he knows that every weekend you're taking your kids off to soccer clinics all over the place, maybe as a thank you for a job well done, he gives you a gas card to help eliminate your fuel bill, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe if he knows that you like roses show up at your desk for your birthday. He does the little things for his people. And so that idea of hugging your people is a figurative hug.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read it, I set it down. And first of all, it's a great book, but I thought, there's no rocket science here. This is just being human with your people.
Yes, absolutely. There's is there a time and a place to have more gatherings outside of the workplace? I know that culture is very important, and now oftentimes we see this transition away from the direct workplace into more social settings. Is there value in doing that in the 21st century?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that comes back to the culture of your organization, right?
Mm.
I mean, I think that the younger generation, specifically the millennials and now Gen Z, they thrive on that tribe mentality of we're in this together.
Absolutely.
And we want to play together as well.
Yep.
And in fact, throughout this quarantine, my 24-year-old daughter said, Dad, I miss going to work. I miss my coworkers. And it's one thing to be sitting here on the computer and be on Zoom with them, but I miss going to lunch or having a coffee with them or going out for happy hour. And so there is that sense of community that builds when we're not in the four walls of our workplace. I think where some businesses have to be careful about it is not everybody wants that. Some people are private and say, gosh, I just spent 40 hours this week with you people. I just want to go home.
I don't want any more.
And so, and I think we have to respect that. And so, I think it's great when teams want to do things outside of the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time honor those folks who say, now it's time for me to be with my family.
It brings up an interesting thought, Ed, is that with this pandemic that you mentioned earlier, there is this shift to online work, if you like. And I know I've spoken to many people that are now working in their home offices where traditionally it was always face-to-face. And there seems to be a seismic shift in, hey, I don't want to necessarily, travel an hour both ways every day anymore if I can do it at home. Are you hearing that murmur? And what do you think will happen with that post-pandemic?
Absolutely. I did a few videos last year, actually on the topic of remote work. Mm-hmm. And I've been a big proponent for it because, again, why have all of the facilities and all that overhead cost to run our business that handcuffs us sometimes from growing our business properly in the way we want to, mm-hmm. and then rewarding our people, right?
Yeah.
And it was, this video series was met with some pushback. Like, come on, Ed, really, not everyone can work from home. And I said, we have all the technology.
Yeah. And
so what it comes down to is a lot of times it's the control factor. I was speaking at a conference in the fall, and one of the attendees, we got to talking about remote work, even though it wasn't really the center of my discussion, but she says, Ed, I don't support remote work. And this was an HR person. I said, why not? And she says, because I won't know if they're actually working. And I said, well, if you can't trust the person to work when you're not watching them, why would you have hired them to begin with? I mean, aren't we inherently looking to trust our people when we shake their hand and say, if you hit these results, we will give you these rewards. Go get them. I just don't subscribe to that. Mm-hmm. And I think that what's going to happen is as the world economy starts opening up from this, and business starts saying, all right, y'all, come on back. I think that some people are going to say, wait a minute, it's been 6 weeks, 8 weeks, however long it's been, and I've been productive. I haven't missed a beat. Why do I need to go back to the office?
It's a license to question it, isn't it? It's a license to question it.
I actually was speaking with a friend of mine who's in the real estate business. And one of her customers is a property management firm. So you think if anybody feels like they got to have an office, it's a property manager, right?
Yep.
They've decided they're selling their office, that they're
Wow.
going to go all remote when this is done because they haven't missed a beat, and they decide we don't need all this overhead. And I say, hallelujah. Now,
Absolutely.
if you're an investor in real estate, you probably don't like me for saying that, but that's the reality.
That's
I
what's going to
think that,
happen, isn't it? It's just the way we're going. I really appreciate this candid insight. This is what the My Future Business audience loves, Ed. So you talked about culture before, and I think it's a very strong, important part of this whole conversation. I wonder, from your personal experience, what are some of the major brands that have really stood out for you in terms of culture?
well, when I think about companies that have unique cultures, let's put it that way.
Hmm.
So, um, well, I mentioned, I cut my teeth at UPS, right? And there's at UPS there is very much a promotion from within culture
Yeah.
that we want you if you're going to be in a position of responsibility for people, we'd like you to have a sense for how their job works, interact, fits. That's unique to UPS. Now, they've grown so fast that they have gotten away from that a little bit. I mean, but back when I started 30 years ago, I mean, you didn't get into management unless you drove a brown truck for a little bit. It was that ingrained in their culture.
Yeah.
Um, I start to think about organizations like, well, even the biggies, right? Like you think about Google and having their little nap pods and having their people taking 20% of their time to work on a pet project. How many organizations could honestly look at their people and say, take one full day a week and just go work on whatever you want to work on? Solve world hunger, do something cool, right?
Utopian, isn't
Um,
it?
right. Versus an organization, the opposite of that is, I have a local firm that I've been mentoring the CEO because he's a baby boomer. His entire staff are young Xers and millennials. And so there's a big gap there.
Hmm.
And he's not understanding why they're asking for Keurigs in the break room instead of your standard old pot of coffee. Like, because they want some variety. What's the big deal? Well,
Yeah.
they also want to do this dressing down stuff. Clients never come into your workplace. So
What's it
while we
matter?
can keep it professional, why do they have to wear even business casual attire? Why couldn't you let them wear jeans? It's a mind shift. And so I think that a company, if they don't have a culture that's going to attract the kind of people that they want, and that's where this business owner is struggling, that's where the culture piece really hits it. So
Yeah.
when you hear about, Forbes list of great company cultures, and those kind of lists are kind of cool to read through, I always step back and say, well, what's the culture I would want? If I wanted to step back into a corporate role, these companies have good cultures, but they may not be a good culture for me.
Yeah.
So that's what I think today's job seeker is really looking at it as. What do I want out of my employment experience?
You talked about leadership before, and how it's at the pointy end of an organisation, and I'd love to talk more about that. And we often also hear about bottom up management instead of top down management. Flat structures and all these wonderful buzzwords. Really, this is about the people that are being seen as the leaders in the organisation, walking the walk, talking the talk. Is that something that's learned, or is it innate within a leader in an organization?
So there are obviously natural born leaders.
Hmm.
We can't discount that. However, leadership can be learned. Um, there are just way too many books on leadership and studies to show that if you work on these skill sets and master them, that you can elevate yourself. And there are certain people that just have those characteristics, right? I mean, you or I maybe will never throw a baseball 90 miles an hour. We'll probably never pitch in the major leagues, but it doesn't mean we can't learn to throw a baseball, right? And
Yeah.
so we're always going to have those different levels. And I think that that's where a lot of companies miss the boat when it comes to developing their people, is they spend so much time and energy with their training dollars
Hmm.
on, well, we got all the compliance related stuff, so let's knock all that out first. And then whatever's left over, we'll send some people to some conferences or things. Well, we need to be a little bit more strategic than that with our precious resources. And especially, now when the world economy is suffering and money's starting to tighten up a little bit, now is when we have to be real strategic with our spends. And so I'm an advocate for companies doing a deep dive with their people on what they need to be better for their organizations, and let's give them that, right? Let's
Yeah.
not roll out these massive training programs where everyone has to attend it, and half the people are sitting there saying, well, I already exhibit these behaviors, why am I even here? I mean, you talk about a demotivator and a waste of resources.
Yeah.
So I really think that whether it's leadership development or any other non-technical type skill set that you identify, let's get that to our people. And again, the younger generations are demanding that. It's no longer a nice to have. They're saying if you don't invest in me, then I'm not investing my time in you, and I may even apply to your job if I find out that you're not going to invest in me.
Yeah, thank you so very much. I've been looking through your website and your bio and all this wonderful content that you've put out there. And it struck me that when you're in front of people on stage or in front of groups talking to them, it takes a level of confidence. It's a leadership trait, I think. Did you find that natural for you, or was it something that you had to learn?
Well, I still think I'm in a learning curve for how to be a really good public speaker.
Hmm.
And in fact, I work with a speaking business coach on that front, right? And trying to get better. Was I always a great public speaker? No.
No.
I think back to some of my earliest time. I mean, I'm amazed at what the schools are doing with the kids now. I mean,
Yep.
my sixth grader getting up in front of her class, giving presentations. I love it. Absolutely love it. I mean, but I think back to probably the first time I had to really give a professional talk. I was maybe a junior in high school, and I had to go to a local service club. I was working on my Eagle Scout project, and I had to pitch them on my project because it was in a park that this group managed. And I was just nervous as all get out. And I realized that, these guys were here to listen to what this 16-year-old kid had to say. And it gave me some confidence. And it kind of went from there. And so though I'm a bit introverted by nature, I do kind of love being on the stage and,
It's funny,
and
isn't it?
talking. So yeah, it's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. All of this stuff is so very valuable. I'd love to shift gears if we could now, Ed, and talk about your wonderful book.
Oh,
Where did the idea for this book come from?
wow.
Long
First
story.
of all, I did not ever think I was going to write a book. Like that just wasn't even on my radar. And it was probably, oh, I don't know, November, December of 2018. And I was having a session with my marketing consultant, and she said, "Ed, you've got so much content. We got to put it in a book." And I looked at her, I said, "You're crazy. I have no desire to do this." She said, I think you've got so much that we've worked on all these years. I think if we could put it into this book. I said, all right. I was very just hesitant. And then it was a good 10, 11-month process to make this thing happen. And as we got into it and we started the writing and the expanding of my blog posts into chapters and those kinds of things, it got to be really fun. And as part of it, I started interviewing CEOs to get their takes on the various thoughts that I was putting down.
Hmm.
And that was eye opening, talking to CEOs that want nothing to do with HR. They'll do anything they can to not have HR in their company, to CEOs that won't make a move without HR in the room. And then of course, everything in the middle. Right. And I see all those perspectives, and each of those CEOs have those perspectives because of their experience with past people in HR.
Yeah.
And, so I have been all along, probably last several years now, quite a contrarian in HR circles because quite honestly, I'm tired of hearing HR saying, we want a seat at the table. Well, then start acting like a business leader and you will get there.
Yeah.
And so that really became the theme for the book, that if I'm going to do this thing is going to be a blueprint for CEOs to say, this is what I want out of my HR function. And it's also going to be a roadmap for HR to say, hey, if you want to get out of planning parties and be in the compliance police, then you got to step your game up. And here's the roadmap to make that happen for you.
It's one of these books that you think to yourself, I wonder if because the My Future Business audience, Ed, are startup entrepreneurs and small to medium sized organisations, would they get some value out of this book? Do you think, or is it for larger organisations?
No, I absolutely think they would. There is no better time to start expecting out of HR what you want than when you even have that first nucleus of people, 5, 10 people. You don't even have a formal HR function, but you have HR, right? You've got to have some sort of hiring process, some sort of training process, and some way to hold your people accountable. So you've got the granules of an HR function. And this book would certainly help those folks, in addition to people that have established HR functions and they're saying, gosh, this isn't working. What the heck is going on?
There seems to me like there's a lot of foundational content in there that wouldn't change, or would there be updates or revisions to this book as things change in the HR space, do you think?
Wow, Rick, it just came out in January and you're already talking about a revision.
Hey, look, that's my HR background. Things change occasionally.
Yeah. It's one of those things that probably a lot of women after they've given birth say, I'm never ever doing that again. And then you see them 10 years later and they've got 3 or 4 kids. So the pain wears off, I guess. I think so. I mean, I've already had thoughts around some leadership things that I didn't get into there. I start to hint around about leadership in some of the later chapters and how you lead a team well. But I didn't really talk about how you lead yourself well and some principles that I've come to believe in on the leadership front. So I could see, if not updating this one, maybe a whole separate book. But
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're waiting for it now. You know that.
Yeah. So it was a fun process. And actually the funny thing was that the writing was the easy part. When you got to the editing and working through the formatting and picking a doggone cover design. I mean, those things were the things that were probably the most stressful actually in the whole process.
I wonder, I can envisage myself receiving the first copy as the author. I bet you it was an exciting moment. How did you feel when you got your hands on that first book?
Oh, it was really cool. And I'm so blessed that a good business friend of mine is in the printing business. And so I was no one else I was going to trust to print the book but him. And so he called me and said, Ed, I've got your couple of proofs ready. I've got it available in softback and hardback. And so he handed me a couple of these. And it really, you'd think after 13 months of seeing this thing through that it would have been like, oh, cool, that's done.
Get it away from me.
Yeah. But I sit here and I still flip through it and I think, I did this.
That's your work.
Holy cow. It is a bit surreal. My 6th grader thinks I'm famous. Dad, you have a book and you're on these podcasts and I see your videos and you're on YouTube.
You're amazing.
I got a famous dad, The best part of it, I mean, I did dedicate the book to the women in my life. I've got a great wife and three awesome daughters, and and I kept that secret from them. And so when I gave each of them a copy and they saw that, of course, there were tears, and that made me cry.
That's wonderful. These are the real life stories that make a great deal of difference. It's not about the mechanics of the business only, but it's also the people, the heartbeat behind the families that are doing this for a bigger reason. Helpful people, helping people is one of the mantras at My Future Business. So I do appreciate you spending some time with me. Now, when people go onto your website, Ed, what are they likely to find if they want to, connect with you, work with you, things like that?
Oh gosh, there's plenty of ways to connect with me. I'm on all the obvious social media channels: LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and obviously my website, edkrow.com. On there you'll find I've got a pretty robust blog. I tend to put one solid article out a month, and so I don't approach blogging as 1 or 2 paragraphs. I do a little bit of research and thought and really put some meat into each of my blog posts. You'll find videos, some of them small vignettes of I get an idea in my head I want to talk about, and it might be 3 to 5 minutes, up to anytime I'm on a stage somewhere, I have it recorded. And so you could see one of my full webinars or a full live conference session up there. Obviously, you can purchase my book through the website. And there's all the foundational things of how I work with my clients. The things that I believe in and how I believe they impact those clients and the testimonials that go with it. And I can't thank my web team enough for what they do to keep my electronic profile
alive and well online. Now, thinking of all things alive and well and online, Ed, is there a likelihood that you will convert your wonderful book into an audio book at any stage?
Yeah, so I have been in talks about making that happen. I'm also looking at putting it into a Kindle version as well. And so those two things are actively in the works. Trying to look is Amazon the best way to go for that? And I'm getting advice from some, various folks on that front. But yeah, I'm looking at both of those. And I would love to do the audio first. And so I'm really exploring that here in the last couple of weeks.
Well, for everybody who's on the show today, as is normally the case, I will be creating some links back to Ed Crowe, and it's Ed Crowe with a K, and you can find that below this post no matter where you find it, via the My Future Business app, the website, all the social media channels. You are definitely going to be able to find this wonderful interview. And speaking about all things wonderful, Ed Crowe, thank you so very much for spending some time with me on the My Future Business show today.
Oh, this was a great time, Rick. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.